So another part of what we do when we take out old units is we recycle them. So we break them down into their assorted scrap categories. I'll call it scrap metal, which is going to include this covering, you know, anything that's not a motor, wire, copper, brass, electrical. We tend to keep the components like contactors and circuit boards in place. We don't have a vendor for recycling that sort of thing. But anyway, I'm going to take you through tearing one down completely. The refrigerant's already been recovered from this. Sometimes we'll pump the refrigerant down into the condensing unit if the compressor is operational. That way all of the refrigerant from the system when it was in place is in here, and then when we get it back to the shop, we'll take our recovery machine and we will recover that refrigerant into a tank so it can be turned in accordance with EPA guidelines. So this system here has already been torn down. So what I'm going to do is take all of the screws out first, separate everything, scrap metal, take the coil out, the compressor out, all the wire, and we'll leave all of the components that we don't have a vendor for attached to the equipment, which is what our local recycling place has asked us to do. I guess that meets some kind of guideline, because if we take anything out, it's not considered scrap metal anymore. So I guess they dispose of things that don't have any magnetism to them. Don't know that for a fact. That's just what they've asked us to do. So that's how we do it. So give you a time lapse here of tearing this one down. All right, so now we've got everything separated down, what I call a basic tear down. So we've got the coil separated, the compressor's loose from the bottom plate, and now we're going to cut the wire off of this, get all the wire out of that. Sometimes we take the motors loose from there for what scrap pays right now, or what motors pay. It's not really worth the time to separate that as far as payback on time spent. So we'll just take those, and then the scrap yard will separate it, and they'll reap the, I guess you could call it the financial benefit of that. This is, we have to separate number 1 copper. So we've got a bucket here for number 1 copper. Number 1 copper, can't have any braze marks in it, any kind of solder, flux, brass, anything other than just straight copper. It has to be 100% copper. Can't have any glued on insulation to it. So we've got a bucket here for number 1 copper. Number 2 copper can have braze joints on it. So where we use some brazing rods, solder, whatever you want to call it, but it can't have any brass or anything in it. So it's not really worth the effort of spending, you know, 30 hours cutting all the number 1 out of pieces like this. So this is a bucket of number 2 that started. So this is the copper or the refrigeration stuff that we cut out of this condenser that we just videoed. So we'll have to take, this is steel, we'll have to take the steel out. This is brass, I believe. It's thermostatic expansion valve. another filter dryer here. The reversing valve has to come out. Sometimes we'll just put all this together in a big bundle and take it to the scrapyard, and they'll give us, like, I think they call it a dirty #2 price for it. It's just a matter of if you're into this trade or you're going to tear down your own unit, if you want to take the time to make an extra, you know, $5 off of this system, go for it. When we've got a huge stockpile like this in here, it's not really worth the time when we have other things to do. So we're just trying to make space, get this out. This is the basic teardown now. They give you a clean and dirty copper price, or excuse me, they call it reefer price, but that's the coils. I guess that's an abbreviation for refrigeration coils. But we'll have to take, gotta make sure my screen's up here. There we go. So this is steel here, this plate right here, and this is the copper tubing that's running through the coil coming out on this side. So we've got to get this steel plate off to get an extra like 30-40 cents a pound for coils. So there's 3 ways we found to do this. You can either take your Sawzall and cut down flush against this steel plate and then hammer this plate off, which that's probably pretty easy for this one. Or you can cut this side and then cut on this side, and you lose the copper that stays wedged between, you know, the steel plate here. But to do this one, it'd be a lot easier to probably hammer this off, because we can get a nice clean cut here, and then it'll take minimal effort to hammer this off. Some of the more rusty coils, like this came out of an old Hvac coil, all this rust on that steel plate, it's probably going to be easier to take and cut the outside of this plate and then come in and cut the inside of this plate and dispose of the plate. That way you're getting the copper and you're getting a clean coil, and you have a, you know, a small loss of copper that's not worth trying to hammer that off, because the copper is just about binded to the steel plate because of the rust. Anyway, I'll include breaking coils down in a little bit, but we're going to take the wire. We've already got a bucket on the trailer for that, or a bin. So this is motors, this is wire, scrap metal, and then compressors. So we're back. I got the trailer loaded with the first trip. Not going to turn these in. There's only 3. We are going to do the wire. We got these compressors, and then there's 2 or 3 rows all the way across the trailer of compressors. I think there was like close to 50. So you got these here, and then all these all the way across, and then we've got all of the scrap that came off of all of those units in an old furnace that came out of a outdoor living space package unit, and all the scrap here. And then we've got all the copper, or the dirty number 2 as we called it. This is all the copper that has the steel in it, the brass, all the different kinds of metal that needs to be separated. Then we got all of our coils, condenser coils that are ready to be torn down. We're ordering a panel for this unit. I'll try and reuse it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just time for an upgrade. It's the back side of the coils, and then we've got some more coils over here. But we're going to take this load to the scrap yard, show you what that's about, and then we'll come back and tear these coils down into clean reefer and copper. And we'll take a load of coils and copper to the scrap yard. Alright, so we've made it to the scrap vendor here. To pull up on the scale and weigh in. Gonna offload the scrap metal first. Weighing in at 14,340. So we got weighing off at 12,360. That's for scrap metal. Gonna go offload compressors now. Well, we usually get the magnet, but we're getting the magnet today. Usually we have to offload these by hand. All right, and now we're at 10,100 pounds. And we didn't dump the wire. We'll just bring that back when we do the copper. And then it just jumped up to 10,120. The scale does 20-pound increments.